country girls.
You want to fight? I'll fight. You're such a good friend, Ellie.
There are shows that entertain you, and then there are shows that raise you. Little House on the Prairie, which ran on NBC from 1974 to 1983, was the second kind. For 9 seasons, it planted itself in the living rooms of tens of millions of families and asked them to care about a world of hard winters, scarce harvests, and ordinary people trying to love each other well. It wasn't polished or cynical. It was sincere to the bone, and that sincerity was its superpower. But while Walnut Grove stayed frozen in memory, the people behind it kept changing. Some of them went on to remarkable second acts. Some carried wounds the cameras never saw. Some are gone now, taken by illness, by time, by lives fully and sometimes painfully lived. And a few of their real stories are every bit as moving as anything that ever aired on a Monday night. This is where they all are now. Charles Ingalls is the moral center of everything. He is the father who builds, repairs, and endures, a man who doesn't lecture his children about goodness so much as perform it, quietly, in front of them, every single day. The show asks whether a good man is enough to hold a family together against the grinding cruelty of the frontier. And in Landon's hands, the answer always felt like yes. Born Eugene Maurice Orowitz on October 31, 1936, in Forest Hills, Queens, Landon was 37 years old when he first stepped onto the set as Pa Ingalls. He had already been a star for 15 years, playing Little Joe Cartwright on Bonanza from 1959 to 1973. But Little House gave him something Bonanza never could: total creative control. He didn't just act on the show. He wrote it, directed it, and produced it, shaping nearly every frame with a hands-on ferocity that his cast both admired and occasionally chafed against. What Landon brought to Charles Ingalls was a quality that's genuinely rare in leading men: tenderness without weakness. He could cry on screen, openly, without embarrassment, in an era when that wasn't considered acceptable for a male television hero. He held his daughters with his full arms, not just his fingertips. He made fatherly love look like an active, strenuous, wonderful thing. Charles Ingalls represents the ideal that the show never stopped reaching for. That decency, hard work, and deep family bonds are enough to face anything. Landon made that ideal feel earned rather than sentimental. After Little House ended, he created and starred in Highway to Heaven, which ran on NBC from 1984 to 1989, and notably brought several of his Prairie cast members along with him. Then, in April 1991, came the diagnosis that stopped America: pancreatic cancer. He appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson weeks later, his weight dramatically reduced, facing the cameras with a courage that was almost unbearable to witness. He died on July 1, 1991, in Malibu, California. He was 54 years old. Charles Ingalls endures because Michael Landon made fatherly goodness feel like the most heroic thing a man could choose to be. Laura is the show's restless, searching heart. She is the child who questions everything, and the young woman who grows into her own definitions of strength and duty. Every episode that matters passes through her eyes first, and the show lives or dies on whether you trust what those eyes are telling you. Born Melissa Ellen Gilbert on May 8, 1964, in Los Angeles, she was just 10 years old when Little House began filming. She reportedly beat out nearly 500 other girls for the role, and watching the early episodes, you understand why immediately. She wasn't performing a child. She was one: complicated, impulsive, occasionally maddening, deeply feeling. As the series aged and Laura aged with it, Gilbert navigated that rarest of child actor challenges, growing up on camera, in front of the world, with her identity tangled in a fictional one. What she brought that can never be replicated is the specificity of her reactions. Laura Ingalls didn't just feel things, she showed the moment before she felt them. That flicker of uncertainty or recognition that made every emotional scene feel genuinely discovered, rather than scripted. Off-screen, she and Michael Landon developed a bond as close and complex as any real father and daughter, one that included genuine friction in later years, and a complicated reconciliation just before his death in 1991. Her own father, Paul Gilbert, had died when she was 11, and Landon's presence on set filled a space nothing else could. After Little House, Gilbert continued acting extensively in television movies, served 2 terms as president of the Screen Actors Guild beginning in 2001, survived serious personal struggles with addiction and 2 failed marriages, and eventually found steadiness in life with actor Timothy Busfield, whom she married in 2013. She moved to rural Michigan, wrote a candid memoir called Prairie Tale in 2009, and has continued to embrace the show's legacy with genuine warmth. In 2026, Melissa Gilbert is 62 years old. Laura endures because Melissa Gilbert made growing up look like the bravest and most complicated journey a person could take. Caroline Ingalls holds the household together in the spaces between Charles's grand gestures. She is the one who keeps the lamp burning, who absorbs the grief quietly, who makes the house feel like a home rather than just a shelter from the cold. She is, in many ways, the invisible architecture of the entire show. Born February 25, 1942 in Berkeley, California, Karen Grassel was 32 when she landed the role of Ma Ingalls, a classically trained stage actress who had studied at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art and performed Shakespeare and serious dramatic theater before NBC found her. She had been working in legitimate theater, largely unknown to television audiences, when Little House changed everything. What Grassel gave Caroline was a quiet, watchful intelligence. This was not a woman who merely kept the hearth. She listened carefully in scenes where other actresses might have settled for reactive nodding, and the accumulation of those small decisions created a character whose interior life you believed in entirely. Thematically, Caroline represents endurance as love, the idea that staying quietly and faithfully in the hard place is itself a form of heroism. Her relationship with Michael Landon was, by her own account, a complicated one. She wrote about their professional tensions with honesty in her 2021 memoir, Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, acknowledging salary disputes and the specific friction of being a strong woman on a set where one man's creative vision was absolute. That honesty, arriving decades later, added texture and depth to what had seemed like a seamless collaboration. After Little House, Grassel worked steadily in theater and smaller film and television projects, maintaining a life deliberately outside the Hollywood machine. In 2026, Karen Grassel is 84 years old. Caroline endures because Karen Grassel made patient love look like its own form of quiet, unbreakable strength. Nellie Oleson is one of American television's great villains, and one of its most carefully constructed ones. She isn't evil for the sake of it. She is the product of entitlement and an adoring, terrible mother, a child who learned that cruelty was the currency her world traded in. Every generation of kids who watched this show needed someone to despise, and Nellie gave them that permission with spectacular commitment. Born Allison Margaret Arngrim on January 18, 1962 in New York City, she was 12 years old when she began playing Walnut Grove's most enthusiastically awful resident, and she stayed in the role for 7 seasons. She has said she initially auditioned for Laura and Mary, which is almost impossible to imagine, and that Nellie arrived partly by accident and partly by instinct. What Arngrim understood about Nellie, with a sophistication remarkable in someone so young, was that the character's cruelty had to be funny, or it would become simply unpleasant. She calibrated her performances with comic precision, the raised chin, the withering glance, the histrionics deployed with theatrical flair. She made Nellie entertaining to hate, which is a much harder trick than making a character merely hateful. The real story behind Arngrim's life is one of extraordinary courage. In 2004, she publicly revealed on Larry King Live that she had survived childhood sexual abuse. Her on-screen husband, Steve Tracy, who played Percival Dalton, died in 1986 of AIDS at age 34, and his death inspired Arngrim to become a prominent AIDS activist, working with ACT UP and speaking extensively about the epidemic at a time when the stigma was crushing and the silence was deadly. She has spent much of her adult life turning private pain into public purpose. Her memoir, Confessions of a Prairie Bitch, published in 2010, became a beloved piece of pop culture literature and the basis of a solo stage show that she has toured globally for over 2 decades. In 2026, Alison Arngrim is 64 years old, still performing, still writing, still refusing to be quiet about the things that matter. Nellie endures because Alison Arngrim made calculated meanness feel like a form of dark art, and then spent her life being the opposite of everything that character stood for. Harriet Oleson is the engine behind Nellie's awfulness, the source code of every piece of petty tyranny that ever rolled through Walnut Grove. She is the show's magnificent grotesque, vain, overbearing, magnificently self-righteous, and in a lesser actress's hands she would have been a cartoon. Catherine MacGregor made her something more unsettling. A recognizable human being, monstrous and somehow pitiable all at once. Born Dorley Dean MacGregor on January 12, 1925, in Glendale, California, MacGregor was already 49 years old when Little House began. A veteran of Broadway, off-Broadway, and serious dramatic theater, a student of the legendary Stella Adler and Sanford Meisner. She had a small uncredited role in On the Waterfront in 1954. She was on the verge of leaving show business entirely, working at an art gallery, when the role of Harriet Oleson arrived and changed the last chapter of her professional life entirely. What she brought was theatrical scale, deployed within a television frame. Harriet's speeches, those magnificent, escalating declarations of wounded dignity, had the rhythm of stage comedy, landing with a precision that made them quotable and repeatable. Off-screen, Melissa Gilbert was among the first to note that MacGregor was, in reality, deeply warm and nurturing toward the younger cast members, which is either the great irony or the great gift of her career, that she spent nearly a decade making millions of children love to hate a woman who was, in private, genuinely kind to the children on set. After Little House, MacGregor retired from screen acting and devoted herself to children's theater, founding the Wee Hollywood Vedanta Players, an extension of her longtime Hindu faith. She lived at the Motion Picture and Television Fund's retirement home in Woodland Hills, California, remaining close to cast members until her death. Catherine MacGregor passed away on November 13, 2018, from congestive heart failure. She was 93 years old. Harriet endures because Catherine MacGregor made sanctimonious self-importance land like high comedy, and reminded us that the most fearless villains are often the kindest people in the room. Isaiah Edwards is the show's wandering soul, a big, rough, lonely man who finds in the Ingalls family the belonging he cannot seem to build for himself. He is the frontier's lost son, repeatedly undone by his own weaknesses, repeatedly forgiven by people who understand that good men can lose their way. He is, in some ways, the truest character in the entire series. Born Victor Edwin French on December 4, 1934, in Santa Barbara, California, French was 39 when Little House began. He came to the show with a long career in westerns behind him. Gunsmoke, Bonanza, the kind of steady work that kept character actors in steady employment without making them famous. He was so frequently cast as a villain that when Michael Landon saw him differently, saw the softness and the humor behind the intimidating frame, it was a genuine act of directorial vision. French and Landon became one of television's most genuine off-screen friendships. Their chemistry as Pa Ingalls and Mr. Edwards was not manufactured. It was the overflow of a real bond between two men who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. French left Little House for a time to star in his own sitcom, Carter Country, 1977 to 1979, then returned to the show and later joined Landon on Highway to Heaven. He was, in many ways, Landon's most constant creative companion. He died on June 15, 1989, of lung cancer in Los Angeles. He was 54 years old, the same age precisely as the man he would watch die 2 years later. Isaiah endures because Victor French made loneliness and loyalty feel like two sides of the same aching human coin. Mary is the Ingalls daughter who carries the show's most devastating storyline, the gradual loss of her sight, the long wrestling with faith and despair that follows, and the eventual rebuilding of a life that looks nothing like the one she planned. She is the show's meditation on grief, not the sudden kind, but the slow kind, the kind that requires you to reinvent yourself entirely. Born September 26, 1962, in Berkeley, California, Melissa Sue Anderson was 11 years old when filming began, the elder of the two Melissas and, by many accounts, the more technically disciplined young actress on set. She had already done commercials and television guest spots before Little House, and she brought to Mary a composure and precision that suited the character's nature perfectly. What Anderson understood about Mary is that the character's goodness was never saccharine. It was the result of genuine effort. Mary Ingalls works at being good, and Anderson played that labor honestly, particularly in the wrenching episodes depicting her blindness. She also demonstrated real range in her post-Little House work. The horror film Happy Birthday to Me, 1981, and the TV thriller Midnight Offerings, 1981, proved she was entirely capable of material far darker than anything Walnut Grove offered. She published a candid memoir, The Way I See It, in 2010, which covered her Little House years and her complicated feelings about child stardom. Anderson became a Canadian citizen in 2007 after relocating to Canada with her family. Her husband, television writer and producer Michael Sloan, passed away in 2025. In 2026, Melissa Sue Anderson is 63 years old. Mary endures because Melissa Sue Anderson made grace under devastation look not like sainthood, but like an act of daily, deliberate will. Albert Quinn Ingalls is the show's troubled surrogate son, a street child brought into the Ingalls family, carrying wounds from a life that the prairie's warmth can heal only partially. His storyline, culminating in one of the series' most emotionally gutting addiction arcs, was unlike anything else on American family television at the time. The show dared to let a child be genuinely broken, and it dared to not entirely fix him. Born Matthew Charles Labourteau on December 8, 1966, in Los Angeles, he was around 10 years old when he first appeared on the show and was formally adopted into the cast in season 6. He brought to Albert a quality that is genuinely difficult to manufacture: the specific vulnerability of a child who doesn't entirely trust his own good fortune. His performance during Albert's drug addiction storyline, among the most memorable of the series' later seasons, was not the work of a young actor hitting marks. It was the work of someone who understood, at some cellular level, what it felt like to be afraid of losing something precious. Labourteau transitioned successfully into voice acting after Little House, perhaps most recognizably as the voice of Wheatley in the Portal 2 video game, 2011. He has been open about his own real-life struggles and resilience, lending his public platform to causes connected to childhood welfare. In 2026, Matthew Labourteau is 59 years old. Albert endures because Matthew Labourteau made the hunger for belonging feel specific and raw and real. The kind of ache that doesn't disappear just because someone finally opens a door for you. Jonathan Garvey is the gentle giant who arrives in Walnut Grove and plants himself in the story like an oak tree, massive, steady, quietly indispensable. He is the show's proof that strength and tenderness are not opposites, that the biggest man in the room can also carry the most grief with the most dignity. Born September 15, 1940 in Logan, Utah, Merlin Olsen was 37 when he joined Little House, and he arrived with a credential no other cast member possessed. He was a Pro Football Hall of Famer, a 14-time Pro Bowl defensive tackle for the Los Angeles Rams, who had been one of the most fearsome players in NFL history. The man who had spent 14 seasons terrorizing opposing offenses now spent his evenings learning to cry on camera, and he did it with a naturalness that astonished everyone who worked with him. What Olsen gave Jonathan Garvey was a physical presence deployed entirely in service of emotional openness. When Garvey's wife Alice died in the school fire, still one of the most traumatic moments in the show's history, Olsen's grief was enormous and unguarded in a way that only someone completely at peace with his own masculinity could have managed. He went on to star in his own series, Father Murphy, 1981 to 1983, before health problems began to slow him. He was diagnosed with mesothelioma, a cancer linked to asbestos exposure, and died on March 11, 2010, at a hospital in Duarte, California. He was 69 years old. His personal mission statement, found after his death, described a man whose values were exactly those he had projected on screen: family, integrity, growth, and the stubborn refusal to stop learning. Jonathan endures because Merlin Olsen proved that the biggest man in the room is always the one who isn't afraid to feel things. Jenny Wilder arrived in Little House's final season as a new young presence meant to carry the show forward. Laura's niece by marriage, earnest and eager, something of a torch passed from one young actress to the next. She was a small role in the broader scope of the series. But the young woman who played her would go on to live one of the most watched, most turbulent, most ultimately moving lives in the history of American celebrity. Born Shannon Maria Doherty on April 12, 1971, in Memphis, Tennessee, she was just 11 years old when Michael Landon cast her as Jenny in 1982, reportedly impressed by her work in a guest spot on his other series, Father Murphy. She was, by multiple accounts, an utterly devoted presence on set, following Melissa Gilbert like a shadow, studying her every move, trying to absorb the craft from someone she idolized. What she brought to Jenny was a freshness and sincerity that fit the role perfectly. But Doherty's real story unfolded in the decades after Walnut Grove. Heathers 1988, Beverly Hills 922, 1990 to 1994, Charmed 1998 to 2001, she became one of the most recognizable faces on American television and one of its most written about personalities, celebrated and criticized in roughly equal measure. Then came the diagnosis: breast cancer in 2015, remission in 2017, a brutal return in 2020, and in 2023, the announcement that it had spread to her brain. She documented that final chapter with extraordinary honesty. The fear, the medical decisions, the insistence on continuing to work and speak and be heard. Shannon Doherty died on July 13, 2024 in Malibu, California. She was 53 years old. The Little House family grieved her as one of their own. Jenny endures because Shannon Doherty spent her whole life fighting to be seen clearly. And in her final years, she made sure she was. Almanzo Wilder is the love story the show had been building toward from the very beginning. Patient, steady, willing to court a girl for years across dusty roads and cold Minnesota winters, he is the show's argument that the right kind of devotion is also the most powerful kind of adventure. When he finally arrives, the series exhales. Born May 20, 1956, in Prince George, British Columbia, and raised in Northern California, Dean Butler was 23 years old when he rode into Walnut Grove in season 6. He came from serious theatrical training, stage productions, touring companies, Broadway, eventually playing Rapunzel's prince in the original cast of Into the Woods, and touring internationally as Tony in West Side Story. He was, in other words, a formally trained stage actor who brought a classical discipline to a role that could easily have dissolved into television handsomeness. What Butler gave Almanzo was unhurried sincerity. The courtship of Laura Ingalls is one of the great slow burns in primetime drama, and it worked because Butler played Almanzo's patience, not as passivity, but as certainty. A man who knows what he wants and is prepared to earn it properly. The chemistry between him and Melissa Gilbert was real enough that it complicated both their lives, as Gilbert has written candidly. After Little House, Butler worked steadily in film and television, most notably playing Hank Summers, Buffy's largely absent father, on Buffy the Vampire Slayer from 1997, before pivoting almost entirely into producing. He has been the senior producer of the Emmy-nominated Fierity series on Golf Channel since 2011, written his own memoir about the Little House years, and has become one of the most engaged and thoughtful custodians of the show's legacy. In 2026, Dean Butler is 70 years old. Almanzo endures because Dean Butler made steadfast, patient love look like the most romantic thing a man could offer. Nels Oleson is the show's quiet conscience trapped inside its loudest household. He is the long-suffering husband who absorbs Harriet's gale force personality with a dignity that hovers somewhere between sainthood and comedy. Every time Walnut Grove threatened to become unbearable, Nels was there. Calm, rational, decent, gently reminding the audience that goodness and intelligence could survive almost anything. Born Richard William Bull on June 26, 1924, in Zion, Illinois, he was 49 years old when the series began, a veteran character actor whose credits reach back to Perry Mason in the 1950s, to Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, to supporting roles in The Andromeda Strain, 1971, High Plains Drifter, 1973, and The Parallax View, 1974. He arrived at Little House thinking it would be a one-shot appearance. When the producers offered him a 7-year contract, he nearly fell over in surprise. What Bull brought was the specific art of the reaction shot, an entire vocabulary of weary tolerance, quiet dignity, and barely suppressed amusement, deployed in response to Catherine McGregor's magnificent storms of indignation. Nels is funny not because he tells jokes, but because Richard Bull's face told the truth in the middle of every lie Harriet was spinning. He stayed close to his castmates long after the show ended, and in his final years he and his wife of over 65 years moved into the Motion Picture and Television Fund's retirement home in Calabasas, where, as it happened, Catherine McGregor also eventually lived. Richard Bull passed away on February 3, 2014 of complications from pneumonia at that same facility. He was 89 years old. Alison Arngrim, who played his screen daughter, announced his passing to the world in 6 languages. Nels endures because Richard Bull made quiet, dignified decency look like its own form of heroism, the kind that doesn't make speeches, just endures. Carrie is the littlest Ingalls, the one who tumbles in the title sequence and embeds herself in the muscle memory of everyone who ever watched this show. She is childhood distilled, small and endearing and perpetually a few steps behind everyone else, which is precisely what makes her so easy to love. Born May 25, 1970, in Hollywood, California, identical twins Lindsay and Sydney Greenbush were just 3 years old when the series began, the daughters of actor Billy Greenbush. They shared the role throughout the show's run, alternating episodes and credited collectively as Lindsay Sydney Greenbush, so that most viewers had no idea there were 2 of them. The showmanship of that arrangement was perfect. Carrie felt seamlessly consistent because the twins were seamlessly identical. The Greenbush twins were among the child cast members who quietly stepped away from Hollywood the moment the show ended, trading the studio lots for ordinary life. Sydney married and has lived a largely private existence. Lindsay eventually returned to the spotlight to a degree, appearing at fan conventions and reconnecting with the show's community. In 2026, both Lindsay and Sydney are 55 years old, living lives that are, by every account, exactly as they chose them to be, which is itself a kind of quietly radical ending for a child star story. Carrie endures because Lindsay and Sydney Greenbush made childhood innocence look like something achingly, briefly real. Reverend Alden is the spiritual anchor of Walnut Grove, the man people turn to when the harvest fails, when a child is lost, when the gap between faith and suffering becomes too wide to bear alone. He is the show's ongoing argument that community is a practice, not just a feeling, and that someone has to keep showing up to make it work. Born Robert William Greer on April 2, 1917, in Fairview, Missouri, Dabbs Greer was 57 years old when Little House began, and his entire career had been, in a sense, preparation for Reverend Alden. He had performed marriages on The Dick Van Dyke Show and The Brady Bunch. He had played the storekeeper Jonas across 41 episodes of Gunsmoke. He had been one of the first people Superman ever saved in the very first episode of Adventures of Superman in 1952. His career spanned nearly 600 television episodes across 6 decades, making him one of the great working character actors in the history of American television. What he gave Reverend Alden was the specific warmth of someone who genuinely believed in the community he was serving. Other actors bring technique to pastoral characters. Greer brought something more essential, the quality of a man who has sat with enough grief to know it, and who keeps showing up anyway. His later work included the unforgettable role of Old Paul Edgecombe, the elderly narrator of The Green Mile, 1999, a performance that reminded audiences late in his career of just how much emotional range this quiet man possessed. Dabbs Greer died on April 28, 2007, in Pasadena, California, of kidney failure and heart disease. He was 90 years old. He never married and left no immediate family. What he left instead was a career that touched in some quiet corner nearly every piece of American television that mattered in the second half of the 20th century. Reverend Alden endures because Dabbs Greer made pastoral care look like the bravest, most steadfast form of love there is. Dr. Baker is Walnut Grove's port in every storm. The man summoned to bedsides, to accidents, to the long, slow vigils that define frontier life. He is medicine in its most human form, stripped of technology and pretension, reduced to presence and knowledge and the willingness to stay. Every time the show needed to remind its audience that life is fragile and precious, Doc Baker was there to hold the weight of that reminder. Born April 3, 1928, in Chicago, Illinois, Kevin Hagen came to acting by an unusual path. He had worked for the U.S. State Department in West Germany, spent a year in law school at UCLA, and was already 27 before he decided to pursue the stage seriously. He was 45 when Little House began, carrying a long resume of Western television work, from shows like Yancey Derringer, Gunsmoke, and the 1965 James Stewart film Shenandoah. What Hagen gave Dr. Baker was the specific gravity of a man who has seen too much death and has decided to keep fighting anyway. His was not a glamorous medical performance, no dramatic diagnoses, no grand surgical scenes. He was present at the ordinary disasters of life in a small community, and his steadiness in those moments gave the show a texture of authenticity that broader dramatic strokes alone could not have provided. After Little House, Hagen moved to Grants Pass, Oregon, where he performed in local theater and stage productions, including a one-man show, A Playful Dose of Prairie Wisdom. He was diagnosed with esophageal cancer in 2004. Kevin Hagen died on July 9, 2005, at his home in Grants Pass. He was 77 years old. Doc Baker endures because Kevin Hagen made the simple act of showing up, again and again for everyone, look like the most essential medicine of all. Miss Beadle is the show's first and most lasting vision of what education can mean in a community. Not instruction delivered from a distant institution, but knowledge offered personally, intimately, by someone who has chosen this specific place and these specific children as her life's work. She is what a teacher looks like when teaching is a calling rather than a career. Born February 27, 1941, in Yuba City, California, Charlotte Stewart was 33 when she auditioned for the role of Walnut Grove schoolteacher. And she won it in a single, unforgettable moment. Walking into the audition room to face a table of producers and Michael Landon himself, she sat down behind the desk, held up her hand, and said, "Silence," channeling a character she had based partly on her own sister. Landon reportedly loved it immediately. She appeared in 45 episodes across the show's first several seasons, and what she brought to Miss Beadle was an intelligence that the camera caught in small, specific moments. The way the character weighed a student's struggle without reducing it to a lesson. The warmth she offered without sentimentality. Teachers watching the show recognized her. Many have said they chose their profession because of her. Stewart's career extends well beyond the prairie. She is also, remarkably, a fixture of the David Lynch universe, playing Mary X in Lynch's cult masterpiece Eraserhead, 1977, and Betty Briggs in Twin Peaks, 1990, making her a beloved figure in two entirely separate fandoms, separated by about as much aesthetic distance as television can manage. She has written a candid memoir, Little House in the Hollywood Hills, published her own complex account of a life that contained much more than Miss Beadle's gentle composure, and continues to delight fans at conventions around the world. In 2026, Charlotte Stewart is 85 years old. Miss Beadle endures because Charlotte Stewart made a teacher's devotion feel like a form of love that the whole town depended on without ever quite understanding how much. Percival Dalton arrives in Walnut Grove as Nellie Olison's husband, and the show does something quietly daring with him. It makes him better than she deserves, and then watches her slowly become worthy of him. He is the character whose very presence asks whether people can genuinely change, and gives the most optimistic answer the show ever allowed itself. Born Stephen Crumrain on October 3, 1952, in Canton, Ohio, Steve Tracy was 29 years old when he joined Little House and began what became one of television's most unexpectedly moving love stories. A spoiled girl and a decent man learning each other. Off-screen, he and Allison Arngrim developed a close friendship that proved, in the years ahead, to be one of the most important relationships either of them had. What Tracy gave Percival was a gentle wit entirely free of meanness. the rare quality of finding someone amusing without looking down on them. He made Percival's patience with Nellie legible and even moving because you could see the specific things he liked about her beneath the terrible things. Arngrim has said she was the only person on set who knew Tracy was gay, and she kept that confidence with absolute loyalty throughout his life. Steve Tracy was diagnosed with AIDS and died on November 27, 1986, in Tampa, Florida. He was 34 years old. His death was among the early, devastating losses of a generation. It moved Alison Arngrim to spend years of her life as an AIDS activist, working with ACT UP and speaking when much of the entertainment industry was still silent. He has survived in the memory of everyone who knew what he gave to that role and in the record of everything his friend did afterward in his name. Percival endures because Steve Tracy made the decision to love someone difficult look like the most natural and worthwhile choice in the world. Adam Kendall is Mary's equal in every sense the show could imagine, not despite his blindness, but alongside it. He is a former law student who lost his sight and found, in the wreckage of that loss, a new purpose as a teacher for children who would otherwise have none. He and Mary are the show's proof that two people shaped by limitation can build something larger than either could alone. Born October 9, 1955, in Vancouver, British Columbia, and raised in Northern California, Linwood Boomer was 23 years old when he joined the cast in season 5. He arrived by what may be television's most accidentally perfect piece of casting. His then-wife worked as a secretary at a theatrical agency, heard the producers were looking for someone to play a blind man, and quietly ensured her husband was put forward for the role. He spent weeks preparing at a school for the visually impaired, learning how people without sight navigate space, respond to sound, hold themselves in the world. What he brought to Adam was a quality of alert intelligence operating behind closed eyes, the sense of a man who is always reading the room through channels other people don't bother to use. His chemistry with Melissa Sue Anderson made their scenes together quietly electric. Two careful, disciplined performers finding each other's rhythm with something that looked a great deal like genuine respect. After Little House, Boomer made guest appearances on various series before disappearing behind the camera almost entirely. And then, in 2000, emerged with something extraordinary. Malcolm in the Middle, the Fox sitcom he created and based on his own unconventional childhood, ran for 7 seasons, won 7 Primetime Emmy Awards, and rewrote the grammar of American family comedy in ways that echoed forward for 2 decades. In 2026, Linwood Boomer is 70 years old. Adam endures because Linwood Boomer made perception without sight look like a form of wisdom, and then spent his off-screen life proving that the best creative vision is always the kind that sees differently. Willie Oleson is Walnut Grove's resident small-time troublemaker. Nellie's less polished shadow, the boy who pitches spitballs at Laura and causes mischief with cheerful consistency, growing slowly and improbably into something approaching decency as the seasons accumulate. He is not a tragic character or a complex one. He is the show's reminder that ordinary boys in ordinary trouble are part of any real community too. Born Jonathan J. Gilbert on April 28, 1967, in Los Angeles, California, he was 7 years old when Little House began. The adopted brother of Melissa Gilbert, planted in the same show as his sister by a piece of family casting that suited them both. He appeared across the entire run of the series, one of only 6 actors to do so. In his early 20s, when the show ended, he made a decision that surprised everyone in the industry and surprised almost no one who actually knew him. He left acting entirely and never looked back. He earned an MBA from the Zicklin School of Business at Baruch College in New York, built a career as a stockbroker, and settled into a private life that is, by every account, exactly what he wanted it to be. For years, there was a quiet estrangement between him and his sister Melissa, the nature of which she described in her memoir as genuinely unknown to her. Then came the 50th anniversary reunion of Little House on the Prairie in Simi Valley in March 2024, and Jonathan Gilbert was there, standing with his castmates for the first time in many years, choosing to mark what the show had been to all of them. In 2026, Jonathan Gilbert is 59 years old. Willie endures, not so much for any specific dramatic weight, as for the honesty of his ordinariness. And Jonathan Gilbert endures because he chose a life entirely on his own terms and found his way back to his prairie family when it counted. James Cooper arrives in the show's later seasons as a boy orphaned by tragedy and given a second chance by the Ingalls family, and almost immediately finds himself at the center of some of the series' most breathlessly dramatic storytelling, including a storyline in which he is shot during a bank robbery and comes within inches of dying on screen. He is, in every sense, a late-season infusion of raw dramatic energy into a show that needed it. Born Jason Kent Bateman on January 14, 1969, in Rye, New York, he was 12 years old when Michael Landon cast him as James Cooper in 1981, and he arrived on set with enough self-possession that the older cast members, by his own account, felt compelled to hazel him, convincing him his character was going to be written out just to watch him squirm. Bateman has recalled the experience with characteristic dry humor, but underneath the story is the portrait of a boy who was already watching, already learning, already tracking the machinery of how a set works and filing it away for future use. What he gave James Cooper was a quickness and an earnestness in precise balance, a child who had been through enough to be older than his years, but not so much that the warmth was gone. After Little House, his career moved through Silver Spoons and the Hogan Family before a long middle stretch that didn't fully deliver on early promise. Then Arrested Development arrived in 2003 and reset everything. His performance as Michael Bluth, the one sane man inside an insane family, earned him a Golden Globe and a whole new generation of fans who had no idea he'd started on the prairie. Ozark, 27 to 2022, completed the transformation, establishing him as one of the most accomplished actor-directors in American television, earning him a Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Directing. In 2026, Jason Bateman is 57 years old and showing no signs of slowing down. James Cooper endures because Jason Bateman learned, on that Little House set at age 12, exactly how to make fake life feel real, and has spent the 40 years since proving he was paying very close attention. And so here we are at the end of the road from Walnut Grove. Time did what time always does. It kept moving while the show stood still. And the people who gave us those 9 seasons of warmth and hope and heartbreak went on to live lives as varied and surprising and sometimes as painful as any story the writers ever put on the page. Some kept shining, finding new work and new purpose long after the credits rolled. Some fought private battles the cameras never saw. Addiction, illness, estrangement, the specific loneliness of people who were famous in childhood and had to build real selves afterward. And some are now gone, taken by cancers and complications and the simple, irreversible passage of years, leaving behind performances that a new generation discovers every time the show finds its way onto a new screen in a new era. What they gave us wasn't just entertainment. It was a sustained argument. Across 9 seasons and hundreds of episodes, that decency matters, that family is something you choose as much as something you're born into, and that even the hardest prairie winters eventually end. So, which character meant the most to you? Whose story from this cast surprised you or stayed with you? Tell us in the comments below. And if this kind of deep dive into the people behind the shows you love is what you're here for, please like this video, subscribe to Retro Rewind, and stay with us, because there are so many more stories waiting to be told.